The gunshot echoed across the windswept plains as Cordelia Mitchell ducked behind the overturned wagon, her heart pounding against her ribs like a frightened bird. This wasn't how her journey west was supposed to end, ambushed by bandits, her driver dead, and her few possessions scattered across the dusty trail to Silver Creek, Colorado. The year was 1876, and her dreams of a new beginning were disappearing faster than water in the desert sun. "Come on out, little lady," a gravelly voice called. "We just want what's valuable and maybe a bit of company." Cordelia clutched her father's old pocket watch, the only keepsake she had left of him. Tears stung her eyes as she pressed her back against the splintered wood of the wagon. 23 years old and about to die on this godforsaken trail, all because she believed the advertisements promising opportunity and prosperity in the West. She closed her eyes, sending up a silent prayer. The thunder of approaching hoofbeats made her eyes snap open. More bandits? But the shouts that followed suggested otherwise. "That's far enough, Decker." A man's voice, firm but not particularly deep, rang out. "Sheriff's been looking for you boys since that stagecoach robbery last month." Gunfire erupted again, but it was no longer aimed at her hiding spot. Cordelia peered around the edge of the wagon to see 3 riders exchanging shots with the bandits. 2 of the newcomers were tall, imposing figures, but the third, the one who had spoken, was smaller in stature, unremarkable at first glance. He handled his horse with quiet confidence, though, and his shooting was deliberate and precise. When the dust settled, the bandits were either fled or wounded, and the 3 riders approached her wagon cautiously. "Madam?"
"You can come out now."
"You're safe," called the same voice. Trembling, Cordelia stood. Her green traveling dress was torn and dusty, her auburn hair falling from its once neat arrangement. The man who dismounted wasn't what she'd expected. He wasn't tall, barely a few inches taller than herself, and his face, while pleasant enough, would never turn heads. His sandy brown hair stuck out from beneath a well-worn hat, and his eyes were a soft, unremarkable brown. But those eyes held a kindness that made Cordelia's racing heart begin to calm. "Noah Parker, madam," he said, removing his hat respectfully. "These are my friends, Ben and Will Townsend. We're ranchers from the Double P, just outside Silver Creek." "Cordelia Mitchell," she replied, her voice shakier than she would have liked. I was on my way to Silver Creek. I'm to be the new schoolteacher." Noah's eyes brightened with interest. "The schoolteacher? Town's been waiting on you for near 2 months now." The taller of his companions, Ben, approached the dead driver. "This poor fellow's gone, Noah. And these horses won't make it much further. One's been shot in the leg." Noah Parker's face creased with concern as he looked at Cordelia. "Miss Mitchell, I'm afraid you've got a difficult choice. We can't leave you here, but Silver Creek's still 15 miles on. You could ride with one of us, but with night coming." "She should come to the ranch," the other man, Will, suggested. "It's only 5 miles east. She can rest there, and we can take her into town tomorrow." Cordelia hesitated. Going to a remote ranch with 3 men she'd just met wasn't exactly proper, but the alternative was remaining with a dead body as night fell in bandit country. "I promise you'll be safe with us, Miss Mitchell," Noah said softly, seemingly reading her thoughts. "Mrs. Holloway, our cook, is at the ranch, and my sister visits often. Your reputation won't suffer." There was something in his steady gaze that Cordelia trusted instinctively. He wasn't handsome like the dime novel heroes she'd once read about, but there was character in his face, honesty and decency that seemed rare in her experience. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. I accept your offer." Noah nodded, then gently asked, "Have you ridden before, Miss Mitchell?" "Not since I was a girl," she admitted. "You can ride with me then," he said. "Rusty here is the gentlest horse in the territory." Noah helped her gather what belongings could be salvaged, her trunk of clothes, some books, and teaching materials. He handled everything with care, especially when she indicated which items meant the most to her. As he helped her onto his horse, his touch was respectful, his hands steady and sure. They buried the driver as best they could, marking the spot so the body could be properly retrieved later. Then, with Cordelia seated in front of Noah on his horse, they set off for the Double P Ranch. The warmth of his chest against her back was oddly comforting as they rode across the open grassland, the setting sun painting the landscape in shades of gold and crimson. "What brought you all the way out here from?" Noah paused. "Philadelphia," Cordelia supplied. "And necessity, Mr. Parker. After my father died last year, there weren't many options for a woman alone. When I saw the advertisement for a teacher, it seemed providential." "Must have taken courage," he said simply, but there was genuine admiration in his voice. "Or desperation," she replied, then immediately regretted the candor. Ladies weren't supposed to speak so plainly to men they'd just met. But Noah merely chuckled, a warm sound that vibrated against her back. "Sometimes they're the same thing, Miss Mitchell. Courage and desperation." By the time they reached the Double P Ranch, twilight had deepened into night. The ranch house was modest but well-maintained, light spilling from its windows. A large barn stood nearby, along with several smaller outbuildings. It wasn't grand, but it looked solid and welcoming. A stout woman with iron-gray hair hurried out as they approached. "Land sakes, Noah Parker. We were about to send out a search party." Her eyes widened when she spotted Cordelia. "And who might this be?" "Mrs. Holloway, this is Miss Cordelia Mitchell, Silver Creek's new schoolteacher," Noah explained, dismounting before helping Cordelia down. "She was attacked by Decker's gang on the road. Her driver was killed." Mrs. Holloway's weathered face creased with sympathy. "You poor dear. Come inside this instant. You need hot food and rest." The ranch house interior was simple but comfortable, with sturdy furniture and a large stone fireplace. Mrs. Holloway bustled about, setting a place at the table while simultaneously heating water for a bath. Noah excused himself to help his friends with the horses, leaving Cordelia in the capable hands of the older woman. "Noah's a good man," Mrs. Holloway said as she ladled stew into a bowl. "Saved my neck when my wagon broke down in a blizzard 3 years back. That's how I ended up cooking here." "He seems very kind," Cordelia said, unsure why she felt a flush rising to her cheeks. "Kind is exactly the word," Mrs. Holloway agreed. "Not the biggest or the strongest, but he's got a heart twice the size of most men. Treats his hands fair, keeps his word. His brother Patrick owns half this place too, but he's back east on business most of the time." After a hot meal and bath, Cordelia found herself in a small but clean bedroom. Mrs. Holloway had lent her a nightgown and promised to help press her dress in the morning. As she slipped between the sheets, exhaustion finally caught up with her. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was of Noah Parker's gentle hands helping her down from his horse, and the quiet strength in his unremarkable face. Morning brought the scent of coffee and bacon. Cordelia dressed in her newly pressed traveling dress and made her way to the kitchen, where she found Noah sitting at the table with a ledger open before him. He jumped to his feet when she entered. "Miss Mitchell, I hope you slept well." "Better than I expected, thank you." She took the seat Mrs. Holloway indicated, accepting a cup of coffee gratefully. "I've asked Ben to hitch up the wagon," Noah said. "I'll take you into town after breakfast, if that suits you." "That's very kind, but I've imposed enough." "If you could just point me in the right direction, it's no imposition," he interrupted gently. "Besides, I need to go into town anyway. Got business at the bank." Cordelia nodded, strangely relieved. The thought of arriving in Silver Creek alone, after everything that had happened, was daunting. As they ate, Noah asked about her teaching experience. Cordelia found herself telling him about the 2 years she'd spent as an assistant at a girls' academy in Philadelphia, and her hopes for the Silver Creek School. The school boards fixed up the building, Noah told her. It's nothing fancy, but it's solid. About 20 children in town and from nearby ranches and farms. Do you have children attending? She asked, curious about his situation. She had noticed a wedding ring, but that didn't mean much in these parts. A flicker of something sadness? Regret? Passed across his face. No, madam. Never married. Mrs. Holloway harumphed from the stove. Not for lack of trying on some ladies' parts. Widow Turner's been setting her cap for him for 2 years now. Mrs. Holloway, Noah said mildly, a hint of color touching his cheeks. I'm sure Miss Mitchell doesn't care about local gossip. But Cordelia found herself inexplicably pleased by this information, then immediately chided herself for the feeling. What did it matter to her whether this man was being pursued by a widow? She'd only just met him, and her purpose in coming to Silver Creek was to establish herself professionally, not to find a husband. After breakfast, Noah loaded Cordelia's trunk and belongings into a wagon. The ride to town took just over an hour, during which Noah pointed out landmarks and told her about the community she was joining. Silver Creek started as a mining town, but the silver played out 5 years back. Most folks who stayed on are ranchers now, or provide services to the ranches. It's a decent place. Sheriff Matthews keeps order well enough. And the school board? What are they like? Cordelia asked, thinking practically. For members. Banker Fulton's the head bit full of himself, but fair. Then there's Reverend Simmons, Dr. Cooper, and Mrs. Brandt, who runs the general store. They're good people, mostly. Mostly? Cordelia raised an eyebrow. Noah's mouth quirked in a small smile. Well, they all have opinions on how things should be done. But they agreed unanimously to hire you, so that's something. Silver Creek came into view as they crested a small rise. It wasn't large, perhaps 40 buildings arranged along a main street, with smaller houses scattered around the perimeter. A white church steeple rose at one end of town, while the Promise Schoolhouse sat a bit apart, a simple rectangular building with a small bell tower. People nodded to Noah as he drove the wagon down the main street, several calling greetings. He responded to each one, often by name. Clearly, he was well known and respected here. He pulled up in front of a 2-story building with a sign reading Silver Creek Boarding House. Mrs. Winters runs this place, Noah explained. The school board arranged for you to stay here until you decide on more permanent lodgings. The boarding house proprietress was a tall, angular woman with sharp eyes, but a ready smile. She welcomed Cordelia warmly and showed her to a pleasant room on the 2nd floor. Meals are at 7, noon, and 6, Mrs. Winters explained. No gentlemen callers in the rooms, of course, but you can receive visitors in the parlor until 8 in the evening. Once Cordelia's belongings were brought up, Noah awkwardly shifted his hat in his hands. Well, Miss Mitchell, I'll leave you to get settled. If you need anything. He hesitated. The Double P isn't far, and I'm in town regular. Thank you, Mr. Parker, for everything. Cordelia extended her hand, which he took briefly. His palm was calloused but warm, and the touch sent an unexpected flutter through her. Welcome to Silver Creek, Miss Mitchell. With a nod, he turned and left. Cordelia stood at the window, watching as he climbed into his wagon. Just before driving away, he glanced up at her window. Seeing her there, he touched the brim of his hat in a small salute. Cordelia found herself smiling as she raised her hand in return. That evening, Cordelia met her fellow boarders, 2 clerks from the bank, an elderly widow, and the town's telegraph operator. They plied her with questions about her journey and her background, and she gave them carefully edited versions of both. She mentioned being rescued by the Parker brothers and their hands, but downplayed the danger she'd been in. No need to start her new life as an object of pity or scandal. The next morning, she reported to the schoolhouse to meet with the school board. Banker Fulton was indeed full of himself, as Noah had warned, but the others seemed pleasant enough. They showed her the schoolhouse with evident pride. It was basic, one large room with rows of benches and desks, a wood stove for heating, and a small desk on a raised platform for the teacher. But it was clean and well-maintained, with large windows providing ample light. School term starts Monday next, Reverend Simmons informed her. That gives you 5 days to prepare. We've ordered books and supplies. They arrived last month. The children are eager to meet you, Mrs. Brand added. We haven't had a proper teacher since Mr. Collins left last winter. Cordelia spent the following days organizing the schoolhouse, reviewing the available books, and preparing lessons. She also began to learn her way around Silver Creek, identifying which families had school-aged children and introducing herself to parents when possible. On Saturday, she was arranging books on a shelf when a knock sounded at the schoolhouse door. She turned to find Noah Parker standing in the doorway, hat in hand. "Mr. Parker," she said, surprised and inexplicably pleased. "What brings you to town?" "Supply run," he explained. "Thought I'd stop by, see how you're settling in." "Very well, thank you." She gestured to the classroom. "Everyone's been most helpful." Noah stepped inside, looking around with interest. "Place looks better already. You've been busy." "There's much to do before Monday." She hesitated, then added, "I'm a bit nervous, truthfully. 20 children of different ages and abilities." "You'll do fine," Noah said with simple confidence. "Children can sense when someone cares. That matters more than fancy teaching methods." His faith in her warmed Cordelia more than she wanted to admit. "Would you like some coffee? Mrs. Winters packed me a lunch basket, and there's plenty." Noah hesitated, then nodded. "That would be nice, thank you." They sat on the schoolhouse steps, sharing coffee from Cordelia's thermos and sandwiches from her basket. Noah told her about his ranch, how his father had started it with nothing but determination, how he and his brother had expanded it after their parents died, the challenges and satisfactions of the work. "Your brother is back east now?" Cordelia asked, remembering what Mrs. Holloway had said. "Patrick's in Chicago, negotiating beef contracts," Noah explained. "He handles that side of things. I'm better with the land and the cattle themselves." "You must miss having him here." Noah looked thoughtful. "Sometimes. But we each do what we're good at. That's how the ranch thrives." It was such a practical, unselfish perspective that Cordelia found herself studying his face with new interest. In the clear light of day, she noticed details she'd missed before: laugh lines around his eyes, a small scar on his chin, the weathered tan of his skin that spoke of years working outdoors. "What?" he asked, catching her gaze. "Nothing," she said quickly. "Just thank you again for your help. I might not have made it here without you." "Anyone would have done the same," he said, looking embarrassed. "No, Mr. Parker, not anyone would have." She'd known too many men who would have either left her to her fate or taken advantage of her vulnerability. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when the town clock struck 2. "I should get back to my preparations," Cordelia said reluctantly. "And I have supplies to load." Noah stood, offering his hand to help her up. "Good luck on Monday, Miss Mitchell. Though I don't think you'll need it." "Will any of your ranch hands' children be attending?" she asked, hoping this wouldn't be their last meeting. 3 of them. The Coleman boys, they're 8 and 10, and Lucy Harper, who's 12. Her father's our foreman. Noah brushed dust from his trousers. "They're good kids. Smart, too. I look forward to meeting them." As Noah turned to leave, he paused. "Miss Mitchell, there's a town social next Saturday after your first week of teaching. Sort of a welcome for you, I expect. I wondered if that is, would you allow me to escort you?" The invitation caught Cordelia by surprise, but a warm pleasure spread through her at the thought. "I would like that very much, Mr. Parker." His smile transformed his ordinary features, lighting them with a gentle happiness that made Cordelia's heart skip. "I'll call for you at 6 then." All weekend, Cordelia found her thoughts drifting to Noah Parker at odd moments. She told herself it was natural to think of the man who had saved her life, but she knew it was more than that. There was something about his steady presence, his unassuming manner, that drew her. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures. Cordelia dressed carefully in her best teaching dress and navy blue wool with white collar and cuffs. At 7:30, she rang the school bell for the first time, its clear tone carrying across the town. Children began arriving, some alone, some with parents or older siblings. Each one regarded her with varying degrees of curiosity, shyness, or boldness. By 8 o'clock, 19 students ranging from 6 to 15 years old were seated at the desks, with one empty place remaining. Just as Cordelia was about to begin, the door opened and a tall girl with red gold braids slipped in. "Sorry I'm late, madam," she said breathlessly. "Our wagon had a wheel come loose on the way in from the Double P." Lucy Harper, Cordelia realized Noah Parker's foreman's daughter. "That's quite all right. Please take a seat. I'm Miss Mitchell." The first day was exhausting but rewarding. The children were generally well-behaved, if rambunctious, and Cordelia was pleased to discover that most could read at least a little. She assigned them to groups based on ability and set up a rotation system that would allow her to work with each group while the others completed independent work. At the end of the day, as the children were leaving, Lucy Harper approached her desk. "Mr. Noah asked me to give you this, madam," she said, handing over a small package wrapped in brown paper. Curious, Cordelia unwrapped it to find a beautiful brass bell, small enough to fit in the palm of her hand but with a clear, sweet tone when rung. "He said it might be easier than shouting when you want the class's attention," Lucy explained with a grin. Touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift, Cordelia asked, "Will you thank him for me? Tell him it's perfect." "Yes, madam." "He also said to tell you he's looking forward to Saturday." The week passed in a blur of lessons, names to memorize, and systems to establish. By Friday, Cordelia had settled into a rhythm with her students and was feeling more confident in her role. The Coleman boys from Noah's ranch were indeed bright, if mischievous, and Lucy Harper showed particular promise in mathematics. Saturday evening arrived clear and cool. Cordelia dressed with special care in her best gown, a deep green silk that brought out the color of her eyes. She'd brought few luxuries with her from Philadelphia, but this dress, with its fashionable bustle and lace trim, was her one concession to vanity. Mrs. Winters knocked on her door precisely at 6. "Mr. Parker is here for you, dear." In the parlor. Noah stood as Cordelia entered. He'd clearly made an effort with his appearance. His hair was neatly combed, and he wore a clean white shirt with a string tie under a dark jacket that, while not fashionable by Eastern standards, was well made and suited him. His eyes widened appreciatively at the sight of her. "Miss Mitchell, you look very nice," he said, the understatement somehow more charming than flowery compliments would have been. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. So do you." She accepted the arm he offered, noticing that Mrs. Winters was watching them with undisguised interest. The town hall was decorated with paper lanterns and wildflowers for the social. Nearly everyone in Silver Creek seemed to be in attendance, and Cordelia found herself introduced to so many people that the names began to blur together. But everyone was welcoming, and several parents made a point of telling her how much their children were enjoying school already. Noah stayed by her side, quietly explaining who people were and their relationships to each other. His solid presence made navigating the crowd much less daunting. "Miss Mitchell, how lovely you look." A striking blonde woman in an expensive dress approached them. Her smile was fixed on Noah, despite her words being directed at Cordelia. "Noah, I'd nearly given up hope of seeing you tonight." "Evening, Mrs. Turner," Noah said politely. "Have you met Miss Mitchell yet? She's our new teacher." "Indeed," the widow said, giving Cordelia a swift appraisal. "Welcome to Silver Creek. I'm sure the children are in capable hands." There was something dismissive in her tone that made Cordelia stiffen slightly. "Thank you, Mrs. Turner. I'm enjoying getting to know them all." "Noah, they're about to start the dancing," Mrs. Turner said, placing a hand on his arm. "You promised me months ago that you'd save me a dance at the next social." Noah looked uncomfortable but nodded. "I did say that, yes." "You don't mind, do you, Miss Mitchell?" Mrs. Turner's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure there are plenty of gentlemen who would be delighted to dance with our new schoolteacher." Before Cordelia could respond, Noah said firmly, "I'd be happy to honor that promise later, Mrs. Turner. But Miss Mitchell is my guest tonight, and I believe this first dance belongs to her, if she'll accept." He looked at Cordelia, with a question in his eyes. She nodded, unexpectedly touched by his loyalty. "Of course," Mrs. Turner said, her smile tightening. "Later, then." She moved away, her back rigid with displeasure. "I'm sorry about that," Noah said quietly as he led Cordelia toward the dance floor. "Catherine Turner is persistent." "She's very beautiful," Cordelia observed, wondering why the widow's obvious interest in Noah bothered her so much. "I suppose she is," Noah conceded without enthusiasm. "Her husband left her well off when he died. She's been looking for a new husband for 2 years now." "And you're a candidate?" Cordelia couldn't help asking. Noah's mouth quirked. "According to her. Not according to me." The musicians began to play a waltz, and Noah guided Cordelia into the dance with surprising grace. He wasn't the most skilled dancer she'd ever partnered with, but he moved with the same quiet confidence he showed on horseback, and his hand at her waist was respectful but sure. "You dance well, Mr. Parker," she said, genuinely impressed. "My mother insisted Patrick and I learn the basics. Said no son of hers would shame her at social gatherings." His eyes crinkled with the memory. She was a remarkable woman. Came out here as a bride when this was nothing but wilderness. "She sounds wonderful. I wish I could have met her." "She would have liked you," Noah said simply, and Cordelia felt absurdly pleased by the assessment. They danced 2 more dances before Noah fulfilled his obligation to Mrs. Turner. Watching them, Cordelia couldn't help noticing how the widow pressed closer than was strictly proper, or how her hand lingered on Noah's arm when the dance ended. But she also noticed that Noah maintained a polite distance throughout and returned to Cordelia's side as soon as the music stopped. The rest of the evening passed pleasantly. Cordelia danced with several other men, including Dr. Cooper from the school board and Ben Townsend, who had been part of her rescue. But she found herself always aware of where Noah was in the room and felt a disproportionate pleasure when he claimed her for the final dance. As they walked back to the boarding house under a sky brilliant with stars, Noah was quieter than usual. "Is everything all right, Mr. Parker?"
Cordelia asked.
He seemed to come to a decision. "Miss Mitchell, Cordelia, if I may, I've enjoyed your company very much tonight. And, well, I was wondering if you might consider joining me for a picnic tomorrow after church? There's a pretty spot by the creek about a mile out of town. Nothing improper, of course. We could take Lucy as a chaperone, if you'd feel more comfortable." The invitation warmed Cordelia through. "I would like that very much, Noah. And I trust you. I don't think we need a chaperone." His smile in the moonlight made her heart turn over. "I'll pick you up at 1 then." At the boarding house steps, he took her hand and, after a moment's hesitation, raised it to his lips for a brief, gentle kiss. "Good night, Cordelia." "Thank you, for a wonderful evening." "Good night, Noah," she replied, suddenly shy. "Thank you for asking me." She watched him walk away, a compact figure moving confidently through the night, and realized with a start that she was falling in love with Noah Parker. The thought should have frightened her. They'd known each other barely a week, but instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Sunday dawned bright and clear. Cordelia attended the morning service at the white-steepled church, where Reverend Simmons preached a sermon on finding blessings in unexpected places. She was keenly aware of Noah sitting with the Townsend brothers a few pews ahead, and when their eyes met as the congregation stood to sing, the warmth in his gaze made her fingers fumble with her hymnal. After church, she changed from her Sunday best into a simpler blue cotton dress suitable for a picnic. Noah arrived promptly at 1, driving a light buggy and looking pleased but nervous. "I hope you like fried chicken," he said as he helped her into the buggy. Mrs. Holloway insisted on packing the basket herself. Said she didn't trust my cooking. "I love fried chicken," Cordelia assured him. "And I'm curious to see this pretty spot you mentioned." The place Noah had chosen was indeed lovely, a grassy bank beside Silver Creek, where a stand of cottonwood trees provided dappled shade. Wildflowers dotted the grass, and the creek gurgled pleasantly over smooth stones. Noah spread a blanket and unpacked Mrs. Holloway's impressive basket: fried chicken, fresh bread, potato salad, apple tarts, and a jug of lemonade. As they ate, they talked easily about their week, the town, and their backgrounds. Cordelia found herself telling Noah things she rarely shared about her father's long illness that had drained their modest savings, her mother's death years earlier, the limited options that had faced her in Philadelphia. "Teaching was the only respectable profession open to me," she explained. "And when the position here became available, paying 3 times what I could earn as an assistant in Philadelphia, it seemed worth the risk." "Brave," Noah said, regarding her with those steady brown eyes. "Coming all this way alone." "Desperate," she corrected with a small smile, echoing their conversation on the ride to his ranch. "Both," he insisted. "Lots of desperate people never find the courage to change their circumstances." After they'd eaten, they walked along the creek bank. Noah pointed out tracks in the mud: deer, raccoon, fox, reading the story of nocturnal visitors as easily as Cordelia read books. "My father taught me to track when I was just a boy," he explained. "Said a man who can't read the land has no business trying to live on it." "He sounds like a wise man."
He was.
Didn't have much schooling, but he understood what mattered. Noah bent to pluck a wildflower, offering it to Cordelia with a slightly self-conscious smile. "Blue suits you." She accepted the flower, twirling it between her fingers.
"Noah."
"May I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Mrs. Turner is beautiful, wealthy, and clearly interested in you. Why aren't you interested in her?" Noah looked surprised by the question, then thoughtful. "Beauty isn't everything," he said slowly. "And money. Well, the ranch does well enough. I don't need a wife's fortune. And," Cordelia prompted, sensing there was more, "and Catherine Turner sees me as a convenient solution. A respectable husband who can manage her late husband's investments and give her standing in the community." He shrugged. "She doesn't see me." "Not really." The simple honesty of his answer touched Cordelia deeply. How many men would have jumped at the chance to marry a beautiful, wealthy widow? But Noah wanted to be seen for himself, not for what he could provide. "I see you, Noah Parker," she said softly, scarcely aware she was speaking aloud until the words were out. His eyes, when they met hers, held a warmth that made her breath catch. "I believe you do, Cordelia Mitchell." He hesitated, then added, "And I see you too." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then Noah cleared his throat and gestured back toward the picnic blanket. "We should probably head back soon. People will talk if we're gone too long." Cordelia nodded, though part of her wished they could stay in this peaceful spot indefinitely. As they packed up the remains of their picnic, their hands brushed and Noah's fingers closed briefly around hers. "I'd like to see you again," he said. "Not just in passing in town." "I'd like that too." The weeks that followed established a pattern. Noah came into town every Wednesday and Saturday. On Wednesdays, he would stop by the schoolhouse after classes ended, often bringing some small gift, a book he thought she might enjoy, honey from the hives at the Double P, once a perfect fossil he'd found while checking fence lines. On Saturdays, they would have dinner at the hotel restaurant, sometimes followed by a drive or a walk if the weather permitted. Cordelia found herself looking forward to these visits with an eagerness that both thrilled and frightened her. She was building a life in Silver Creek. Her students were progressing well. She'd made friends among the townspeople, and she'd even rented a small cottage that would be available at the end of the school term. But increasingly, she couldn't imagine that life without Noah in it. October arrived with brilliant foliage and cooler temperatures. On a particularly beautiful Saturday, Noah suggested they ride out to see the aspens in their golden glory. "I'll borrow a gentle mare from the livery for you," he promised. "And we can take a picnic." They rode west of town, into the foothills where stands of aspen grew. The trees were magnificent, their leaves shimmering like gold coins in the sunlight. Noah led her to a clearing that offered a view across the valley to distant mountains. After they'd eaten, they sat side by side, looking out at the panorama. Noah seemed preoccupied, repeatedly reaching into his pocket as if checking for something. "Is something wrong?" Cordelia finally asked. "No, not wrong." Noah took a deep breath. "Cordelia, there's something I want to ask you. Something important." Her heart began to race. "Yes." He shifted to face her directly. "These past 2 months have been the happiest of my life. I know it hasn't been long, but I've never been more certain of anything than I am of my feelings for you." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "This was my mother's. My father gave it to her when he asked her to come west with him. It's not fancy or expensive, but—" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band set with a small, perfect pearl. "Cordelia Mitchell, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" Tears sprang to Cordelia's eyes. She'd hoped this moment might come, but the reality of it, the sincere love in Noah's eyes, overwhelmed her. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Noah, I will marry you." His face transformed with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her hand. He leaned forward, hesitating just a breath away from her lips, seeking permission. Cordelia closed the distance, sealing their engagement with a sweet, tender kiss that promised so much more. When they returned to town, they rode side by side, Cordelia's heart too full for words. The ring on her finger caught the afternoon sunlight, winking like a promise. "When?" Noah asked as they approached Silver Creek. "When would you like to be married?" Cordelia considered. "I've signed a contract to teach until June, but perhaps during the Christmas break? That would give us time to prepare." Noah nodded, his smile making his ordinary features extraordinary. "Christmas it is. December 27th. "December 27th, she agreed. "I'll write to my aunt in Denver. She's my only family now. Will your brother be able to come?" "Patrick wouldn't miss it. He's due back from Chicago next month anyway." Noah looked thoughtful. "We'll need to decide where to live. The ranch house has plenty of room, but it's a fair ride to the school each day. Or we could find a place in town, at least until the school year ends." "Let's not worry about that today," Cordelia said, squeezing his hand. "Today is just for being happy." News of their engagement spread quickly through Silver Creek. Most reactions were positive congratulations, well wishes, offers of help with wedding preparations. But not everyone was pleased. 3 days after Noah's proposal, Cordelia was working late at the schoolhouse when Catherine Turner swept in, her face tight with anger. "Miss Mitchell," she said coldly, "I think we need to have a conversation." Cordelia straightened from the papers she was grading. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Turner. What can I help you with?" "You can explain what you think you're doing, accepting a proposal from Noah Parker." The widow's blue eyes flashed. "Everyone knows he was practically promised to me." "I wasn't aware that Noah had made any promises to you," Cordelia said carefully, determined to remain calm. "We had an understanding," Mrs. Turner insisted. "And then you arrived, with your Eastern education and your pretty manners," turning his head. "I believe Noah makes his own decisions," Cordelia replied. And he's chosen to marry me. Mrs. Turner's laugh was brittle. Do you even know what you're getting into? Noah Parker isn't the man you think he is. Ask him about what happened 3 years ago with the Harrington Ranch. Ask him why people stopped inviting him to their homes for a time. Whatever happened in the past, I trust Noah, Cordelia said firmly, though a tiny seed of doubt tried to take root. What was Mrs. Turner referring to? Trust, the widow scoffed. You're a naive fool, Miss Mitchell. Noah Parker needs a wife with connections and social standing, not a schoolteacher who barely makes ends meet. I think you should leave now, Mrs. Turner, Cordelia said, her patience wearing thin. This conversation isn't productive for either of us. The widow gathered her skirts, her face flushed with anger. You'll regret this, Miss Mitchell. Mark my words. After she'd gone, Cordelia sat at her desk, unsettled by the encounter. She told herself that Mrs. Turner was simply jealous, that her insinuations about Noah's past were merely attempts to create discord. But the seed of doubt remained, small but persistent. That evening, she met Noah for their usual Wednesday dinner. He noticed immediately that something was troubling her. What is it? He asked, reaching across the table to touch her hand. Has something happened? Cordelia hesitated, then decided directness was best. Mrs. Turner visited me at the school today. She was upset about our engagement. Noah's expression darkened. I'm sorry she bothered you. Catherine has convinced herself over the years that I would eventually come around to her way of thinking. She mentioned something about the Harrington Ranch, something that happened 3 years ago. She implied there was some sort of scandal. Noah was silent for a long moment, his eyes troubled. Then he sighed. I suppose you should know. It's not something I'm proud of, but it's not what Catherine likely implied either. He looked around the restaurant, which was relatively busy. But not here.
Can we walk?
This isn't a conversation for public places. They left the restaurant and walked toward the creek that gave the town its name. The evening was cool but not cold, with a 3/4 moon providing ample light. 3 years ago, Noah began when they reached a quiet spot. Tom Harrington owned the ranch that bordered the Double P to the north. He was an older man, a widower with no children. He'd come west late in life, using money from an inheritance to buy land. Noah paused, gathering his thoughts. Harrington wasn't a good rancher. He didn't understand the land or the climate. He overgrazed his pastures, didn't put up enough hay for winter, made one bad decision after another. By his 3rd year, he was in serious financial trouble. What happened? Cordelia prompted when Noah fell silent again. I offered to buy his ranch. It was a fair price, more than fair, given the condition of the place. But Harrington refused. Said he wouldn't sell to the likes of me. Noah's voice held old pain. You see, Harrington came from old money back east. He looked down on self-made men like my father, like me. That's terrible, Cordelia said, squeezing his arm. It gets worse. Harrington took out loans against the ranch, using the money to buy cattle he couldn't properly care for. When a bad winter hit, he lost nearly half his herd. He couldn't repay the loans. Noah's face was grim in the moonlight. He shot himself. Left a note blaming me for refusing to help him. Cordelia gasped. But you said you offered to buy his ranch. I did. But after he rejected my offer, I didn't approach him again. I figured it was his choice to make. Noah looked down at his hands. I should have seen how desperate he was getting. Should have made another offer, or found some other way to help. Noah, his death wasn't your fault, Cordelia said firmly. He made his own choices. That's what Patrick said. What my friend said. But not everyone in town saw it that way. Harrington was well-spoken, educated. He'd made friends among the town's merchants and professionals. Some of them believed I'd deliberately let him fail, so I could buy his land cheaply after he was ruined. But you didn't end up buying it, did you? Noah shook his head. The bank foreclosed. They sold it to a cattle company from Denver. I could have outbid them, but It didn't feel right somehow. Cordelia was silent, absorbing the story. It explained Mrs. Turner's cryptic comments, but it also reinforced her belief in Noah's fundamental decency. A less honorable man would have hidden his role in the tragedy or painted himself as completely blameless. "Thank you for telling me," she said finally. "It can't have been easy to revisit that time. I wanted you to hear it from me, not as gossip." Noah looked at her searchingly. "Does it change things between us?" "No," Cordelia said without hesitation. "If anything, it confirms what I already knew about you, that you're a man of integrity, even when it costs you." Relief washed over Noah's face. He drew her into his arms, holding her close. "I don't deserve you, Cordelia Mitchell." "I disagree," she said, resting her head against his chest. "I think we deserve each other, perfectly." As they walked back to the boarding house, hand in hand, Cordelia felt the last of her doubts dissolve. Mrs. Turner's attempts to drive a wedge between them had failed. If anything, the shared confidence had brought them closer. The weeks leading up to their wedding passed in a whirlwind of preparations and normal duties. Cordelia continued teaching, while Noah divided his time between ranch work and readying their future home. They had decided that Cordelia would move to the Double P after the wedding, and Noah would drive her to and from school each day until the term ended in June. Noah's brother Patrick returned from Chicago in late November, a taller, more conventionally handsome version of Noah, with the same kind eyes, but a more outgoing personality. He welcomed Cordelia warmly and immediately set about helping with wedding arrangements, insisting on paying for a new organ for the church as a wedding gift to the couple. "Noah's the heart of this ranch," Patrick told Cordelia one evening when they were all gathered around the fire at the Double P. "I'm good with figures and contracts, but he's the one who makes this place work. He deserves every happiness." Cordelia's aunt arrived from Denver a week before the wedding, a practical, no-nonsense woman who nonetheless burst into tears when she saw Cordelia in her wedding dress. "Your mother would be so proud," Aunt Martha said, dabbing at her eyes. "And your Noah seems a fine man. Not showy, but solid. That's what lasts, my dear." The wedding day dawned clear and cold, with a light dusting of snow that made Silver Creek look like a scene from a Christmas card. The church was decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons, and every pew was filled with townspeople and ranchers from the surrounding area. Cordelia waited in a side room, her heart fluttering with anticipation. Her dress was ivory satin, simpler than Eastern fashions, but beautifully made by Silver Creek's seamstress. She carried a bouquet of winter greenery, pine cones, and dried flowers. When the organ began to play, Cordelia took her aunt's arm. The walk down the aisle seemed both endless and too brief. And then she was there, beside Noah, who looked at her with such love that tears sprang to her eyes. Reverend Simmons smiled at them both. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." The ceremony passed in a blur for Cordelia. She was aware of speaking her vows, of Noah's hands warm and steady as he placed the ring on her finger, of his gentle kiss when the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife. But mostly, she remembered the look in Noah's eyes, a look that promised a lifetime of gentle care and unwavering devotion. The reception was held at the town hall, transformed with decorations and laden tables. Everyone in Silver Creek seemed determined to celebrate, even Catherine Turner, who arrived late but offered stiff congratulations. As the afternoon wore on, Noah drew Cordelia aside. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Parker?" The name sent a thrill through her. "Yes, I believe I am, Mr. Parker." They slipped away amid cheers and well wishes, climbing into the sleigh that would take them to the Double P. Noah had insisted that Patrick, Mrs. Holloway, and the ranch hands stay in town for the celebration, giving the newlyweds privacy for their first evening as husband and wife. Snow began to fall as they drove, large flakes drifting lazily in the fading light. Noah tucked the blankets more securely around Cordelia, his arm warm against hers. Happy? He asked, his breath making clouds in the cold air. Completely, she answered, and it was true. She had come west seeking security and independence, never expecting to find love as well. Yet here she was, married to a man whose quiet strength and gentle heart had captured her own. The double P came into view, lamplight glowing in the windows of the ranch house. Noah had arranged for everything to be ready for their arrival, fires lit, a cold supper waiting, their bedroom prepared. He lifted her from the sleigh as if she weighed nothing, carrying her across the threshold with careful reverence. Inside, the house was warm and welcoming, decorated with more evergreen boughs and candles for the season. "Welcome home, Cordelia," Noah said softly, setting her on her feet but keeping his arms around her. "It's perfect," she whispered, and then his lips were on hers, and words became unnecessary. Later, much later, they lay in the big four-poster bed that had belonged to Noah's parents, the quilts pulled up against the winter chill. Outside, snow continued to fall, insulating their world in peaceful white. "I never expected this," Noah said, his fingers tracing patterns on Cordelia's bare shoulder. "When I rode out that day and found you hiding behind your wagon, I never imagined you would become my wife." "Nor I that you would be my husband," Cordelia replied, nestling closer to his warmth. "But now I can't imagine any other path." "No regrets about leaving Philadelphia behind? About marrying a plain rancher instead of some sophisticated Easterner?" Cordelia propped herself up on one elbow to look at him properly. "Noah Parker, there is nothing plain about you. And no, not a single regret." His smile in the lamplight was worth every hardship, every fear she'd overcome to reach this place. He pulled her close again, his kiss a promise that needed no words. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the land in pristine white. Inside, Cordelia and Noah Parker began their life together, finding in each other's arms the home they'd both been seeking. Spring arrived at the Double P with a riot of wildflowers and the bawling of new calves. Cordelia had settled into ranch life with surprising ease, balancing her teaching duties with learning to be a rancher's wife. Each morning, Noah drove her to the schoolhouse in town, and each afternoon, he was there to bring her home. The cottage she'd planned to rent stood empty. She had no need of it now, not when the ranch house had become truly home. She'd added feminine touches: curtains at the windows, cushions on the chairs, flowers in season, but had been careful to respect the house's history and character. This had been Noah's childhood home, after all, and would someday be the home of their own children. That particular thought had occupied Cordelia's mind increasingly of late. 3 months into their marriage, she was fairly certain she was with child, though she hadn't yet shared her suspicion with Noah. She wanted to be sure before giving him news that would make him so happy. One evening in early May, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the western sky in gold and crimson, Cordelia decided it was time. "Noah," she began, "I've been thinking about the future." "What about it?" he asked, his hand finding hers as naturally as breathing. "About our future family, specifically." She turned to face him, her heart full. "I believe we'll be welcoming a new member around November." It took a moment for her meaning to register. Then Noah's eyes widened, a look of wonder spreading across his face. "Cordelia, are you saying?" She nodded, suddenly tearful with joy. "I'm going to have a baby. Our baby." Noah gathered her into his arms with a whoop of delight that startled the horses in the nearby corral. "A baby? Oh, Cordelia, that's wonderful news." His enthusiasm was everything she'd hoped for. In the weeks that followed, Noah was attentiveness itself, insisting she rest more, fretting about her continuing to teach as her condition became more apparent. "The school term ends in 3 weeks, she reminded him when he suggested she might want to resign early. "I can certainly manage until then. And I've already spoken with the school board about my replacement for next year." "I just worry," Noah admitted. the drive to town and back each day, standing all day teaching. Dr. Cooper says I'm healthy as a horse, Cordelia assured him. And this baby is half Parker's sturdy stock, according to Mrs. Holloway. Noah laughed at that, his worry easing somewhat. I suppose she's right. Parkers tend to be resilient, if not particularly tall. When the school term ended in June, Cordelia found herself surprisingly emotional about saying goodbye to her students. She'd grown attached to them all, from the mischievous Coleman boys to serious Lucy Harper. Will you come back and teach us again someday, Mrs. Parker? Asked 8-year-old Emma Fulton as the last day of school ended. Perhaps, when my own children are old enough for school, Cordelia replied, touched by the question. And you're all welcome to visit me at the Double P anytime. Summer unfurled across the valley in waves of green that gradually turned golden as July gave way to August. Cordelia's condition became more pronounced, her slender figure now distinctly rounded. Noah watched her bloom with a mixture of pride, love, and protective concern that Cordelia found both touching and occasionally stifling. I'm pregnant, not made of glass, she reminded him when he tried to prevent her from helping with the vegetable garden. Humor me, he said, kissing her forehead. This is all new territory for me. As her pregnancy progressed, Cordelia found herself thinking often of her own mother, wishing she could ask her advice or simply share this experience with her. Instead, she wrote long letters to her aunt in Denver, who promised to come stay with them when the baby was due. Mrs. Holloway proved an unexpected source of comfort and practical wisdom. The cook had raised 5 children of her own before being widowed, and she dispensed advice with the same no-nonsense approach she applied to everything. Babies are tougher than they look, she told Cordelia as they snapped beans on the porch one hot August afternoon. And so are mothers. You'll do fine. Patrick, who divided his time between the ranch and business trips, was delighted at the prospect of becoming an uncle. He arrived back from Denver in September with a rocking horse and a tiny silver cup for the coming niece or nephew. It's too much, Patrick, Cordelia protested when she saw the expensive gifts. Nonsense, he replied cheerfully. What's the point of making money if I can't spoil my brother's children? As autumn painted the landscape in russet and gold, Cordelia's time grew near. Her aunt arrived from Denver, bringing baby clothes and endless stories of her own children's births that were either terrifying or reassuring, depending on the day. Noah grew increasingly nervous as November approached. He took to checking on Cordelia multiple times during the night, until she finally threatened to make him sleep in the barn if he didn't stop waking her up. I'm just making sure you're comfortable, he protested. I'd be more comfortable if I could sleep through the night, she retorted, but there was no real anger in her tone. His concern was sweet, even when it was exasperating. The baby, apparently determined to follow Parker tradition of reliability, arrived precisely on the date Dr. Cooper had predicted, November 12, 1877. After a labor that was neither as easy as Mrs. Holloway had suggested nor as terrible as Aunt Martha's stories had implied, Cordelia gave birth to a healthy baby girl with a dusting of sandy hair and eyes that, when briefly opened, were the same warm brown as her father's. Noah, who had paced the ranch house like a caged mountain lion throughout her labor, was the first person Cordelia asked to see after the birth. He entered the bedroom cautiously, as if afraid he might somehow break the fragile new life his wife had created. Come meet your daughter, Cordelia said softly, pulling back the blanket to reveal the tiny, perfect face. Noah approached the bed with reverence, his eyes wide with wonder. She's beautiful, he whispered. Like her mother. Would you like to hold her? The look of panic that crossed Noah's face was almost comical. I don't know how. She's so small. Just support her head, Cordelia demonstrated, then carefully transferred their daughter to Noah's arms. The sight of her husband, this strong, capable man who could rope a steer and run a ranch holding their tiny daughter with such tender care, brought tears to Cordelia's eyes. Noah looked down at the baby with an expression of awe and fierce love that mirrored exactly what Cordelia felt. "What shall we call her?" he asked, gently touching the baby's cheek with one finger. They had discussed names, but hadn't settled on any. Now, looking at their daughter's delicate features, Cordelia knew. "What about Eliza, after your mother?" Noah's eyes glistened with unexpected tears. "Eliza. It's perfect." He looked down at the baby again. "Hello, Eliza Parker. Welcome to the world." The weeks that followed were a blur of exhaustion and joy. Eliza proved to be a good baby, with a healthy appetite and a disposition that was generally sunny, though she had definite opinions about being wet or hungry and didn't hesitate to express them loudly. Noah took to fatherhood with the same quiet competence he brought to everything. He wasn't afraid to change diapers or walk the floor with a fussy baby, giving Cordelia precious hours of sleep when she needed them most. As Christmas approached their first as parents, and the anniversary of their wedding, Noah disappeared into town one afternoon, returning with a secretive smile that made Cordelia curious. "What are you plotting, Noah Parker?" she asked as she nursed Eliza by the fire. "You'll find out on Christmas morning," was all he would say. When the day arrived, Noah presented Cordelia with a small, carefully wrapped package. Inside was a gold locket, oval-shaped and intricately engraved. "Open it," Noah urged. Cordelia did, finding inside a tiny portrait of Eliza on one side and, to her surprise, a small photograph of her parents on the other, a copy of the one she kept in her jewelry box. "How did you?" she began, tears welling in her eyes. "I asked your aunt if she had any photographs of your parents. She found this one among some papers she'd brought from Philadelphia." Noah looked uncertain. I thought you might like to keep them close. Your past and our future." "It's perfect," Cordelia whispered, clutching the locket to her heart. "The most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." Later that evening, as snow fell softly outside and Eliza slept in her cradle beside their bed, Cordelia turned to Noah with a contented sigh. "Happy?" he asked, just as he had a year ago on their wedding night. "More than I ever imagined possible," she replied truthfully. "Thank you, Noah." "For what?" "For rescuing me that day on the trail. For seeing me as I am. For loving me. For our daughter. For everything." Noah gathered her close, his arms as gentle and strong as they had been the first time he'd helped her onto his horse. "I'm the fortunate one, Cordelia. I never thought a woman like you would look twice at a man like me." "A man like you?" she echoed, raising herself on one elbow to look down at him. "You mean a kind, honorable, gentle man who puts others before himself? Who wouldn't any woman want that?" "I'm not tall," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "Not particularly handsome. Not educated like your father was." "No," Cordelia agreed, tracing the beloved contours of his face. "You're not tall or conventionally handsome, but you're gentle and strong and true. And that's worth more than all the handsome faces or impressive heights in the world." Noah pulled her down for a kiss that spoke of love deeper than words could express. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the land in pristine white. Inside, the Parker family, Noah, Cordelia, and baby Eliza, were warm and safe, surrounded by a love that had begun with an unlikely rescue and grown into something neither of them had dared to hope for. As Cordelia drifted towards sleep in her husband's arms, she thought of how far she had come from that frightened young woman hiding behind an overturned wagon. The journey west had brought her not just a profession or security, but a home, a family, and a love that made every hardship worthwhile. The cowboy wasn't tall or handsome, but he was gentle. And that, Cordelia knew with absolute certainty, was infinitely more than she had ever hoped for.